So we're going to begin lying on our backs for this class. So you may be very happy to lie completely flat on your back, but some may also be happy to lie with the knees bent, the soles of the feet on the floor. This might be quite nice for some backs. And something else that could feel really good if your back is a little iffy would be to take your feet the width of the mat and allow your knees to roll into touch. So a couple of options for lying at the beginning of the class as we just start to take some awareness of our bodies, of our breath. So just start to notice your body physically. Is there anything within your body that you need to take care of today? Any injuries, any tighter areas? And just start to consider your breath. All too often we get sharp and shallow with our breath. So slowing down gives us an opportunity to create fuller breath in the body. So bring your awareness to your belly. And when you take your next in-breath, allow your belly to kind of get soft and, kind of rise so that it's actually filling with air. And then as you breathe out, you can perhaps imagine the belly being like a balloon and just kind of deflating and contracting and pressing the air back out. Breathing in, breathing out. Starting to slow this mechanism down a little. When we breathe well, this can have an effect on our anxiety levels, our fatigue levels, just generally delivering more oxygen to our brain and to our muscles. So as we start to move, we're going to bring the knees in towards the chest. And just lengthening the spine. Maybe it feels good to gently rock from side to side or to circle the knees a couple of times in both directions, just to ease into the lower back and the hips. And then we're going to come to sit. So you may decide to rock up to sit, or you may prefer to roll onto your side and then push yourself up to sit. So let's come to a seated position. And this doesn't have to be crossed legs. So if that doesn't suit your knees or your hips, then take something else that feels good. Perhaps the legs prefer to be outstretched. Or maybe if sitting down on the ground is something that you're really working on, you might just need to bend the knees and take something that offers you a little bit more freedom in the spine. And then just consider your seated position. So as we get used to sitting, if we've not been sitting on the floor for some time, the areas that tend to feel awkward can be the lower back and the shoulder structure, so the top of the chest. So it's worth raising your seat if you find sitting quite tricky. I'm going to do this with a traditional kind of yoga prop today, a flat block. But if you're working in your own homes, this could be a firm, kind of sturdy book or a firm rolled up towel or blanket. So by raising your seat, you give your body a slightly better chance at being able to kind of be stronger in the lower back and allowing you to find some openness across the chest. So it's well worth trying. So perhaps raise your seat as we begin, and the next two movements that we take can be done, with a block beneath your seat if necessary. So as we sit, just take a minute to feel the connection of the parts of your body to the floor or to your brick or whatever you're using to raise your seat. And almost kind of grow out of that stable, grounded base and just find some little adjustments in your posture. So just start to imagine the length of your spine. Almost imagine you're being dangled from the ceiling like a puppet. So you're being very tall from the base of your spine, all the way up to the crown of your head. And then just start to move the shoulders a little bit, shrug them forwards, backwards, whatever just helps to bring some tension out of them. And then just allow them to settle very slightly back and down. So you're not leaning back, you're not trying to kind of overcompensate for any postural difficulties that you might feel, when you sit at your desk or if you're driving. You're just trying to create a little bit of extra opening across the front of the shoulders. Back of the neck is long. Just take a couple of moments to find that breath again. We're going to come into a seated side bend. So I'm going to take one hand out to the side and I'm going to send the other hand up towards the ceiling. I'm going to take a nice inhalation. And then as I exhale, I'm coming into a side reach. And I'm going to try and keep both of my sit bones down on the floor or on the block or raised item that I'm using. So I'm not kind of lifting up as I go. I'm staying anchored through my sit bones. And then I'm inhaling and I'm exhaling, planting that opposite hand down, sending the other one up. And let's come into a side reach on the opposite side. Try not to hold your breath. Try to keep breathing as fluidly as possible. And then inhale, and as you exhale, bring your hands to your sides. And let's take a twist. So I'm just going to turn my body to the side for a minute so you can see me. I'm going to bring one hand behind me. So if I'm on a block, I might just need to sort of hold on to that block as opposed to the floor so that I don't lean back. And I'm going to take my other hand, my opposite hand, to my opposite knee. I'm going to inhale and feel some length in my spine. And then as I exhale, I'm just going to let my body take a gentle twist. Nothing forced. I'm not trying to crane my neck or my gaze to the back of the room. I'm just gently turning. And then I'm going to inhale again. And as I exhale, I'm just going to shift this starting position to the opposite side. Inhale, find some space in my spine, and exhale, gently twist to the left. Keep on breathing. Inhale and exhale. Bring your body back round to the front. And we're going to come on to all fours now. So shift your position so that your wrists come underneath your shoulders and your knees come underneath your hips. Take a gentle drawing of the navel towards the spine. Try not to sort of dip into the lower back, so lengthen through your tailbone. And then try to make sure that your shoulders aren't crowded around your ears. So you want to keep some space here. And then imagine that you've kind of got this lightness drawing up from underneath the palm right up to the armpits, so that you're not kind of dumping into these wrists here. So we're going to take a pose called cat-cow, a great mobilization pose for the back. So we're going to inhale, and as we exhale, we're going to round the back. And then we're going to inhale and lower the belly to the floor. Feel the throat, the heart gently open. I'm not bringing my head right back. I want to kind of keep it a little bit forward here. Exhale, round. And inhale, lower. And exhale, round. Inhale, lower. We'll do this one more time to each side. So exhale, rounding the back. And inhaling, lowering the belly, the heart, the throat, very gently opening. Then exhale, bring your body back to a neutral position. And then we're going to come into a pose called child's pose. So I'm going to take the knees the width of the mat, keeping my big toes together. And then I'm going to see if I can just draw my bottom down towards my heels. And at the same time, I'm going to walk my hands out, and I'm going to lower my forehead down towards the floor if I can. Alternatively, I might use a brick to bring underneath my head so I can bring the floor to me. And if, it's not good for you to come so, closed in with the knees, then you might decide to just sort of stay up a little higher here. So on forearms and legs, forearms and shins. So wherever you need to be, child's pose, feeling some length in the spine, some length in the hips. And then we're going to come back up to all fours. So the aim of today's session is to get some movement, some stretching, some release for the leg muscles, which in turn will help the lower back. So from here, from all fours, I'd like us to just stretch out with one leg. So I'm just stretching out so that I come onto the ball of my foot here. And as I do this, I can feel a stretch into my calf. So I'm coming into the back of my lower leg. And then you can start to have a little bit of a gentle play around here. So you can maybe rock forwards and backwards on the ball of the foot, just to kind of accentuate that stretch in the calf. Maybe you feel it in some other areas in the body, in the leg as well. Just stretching out into the belly of that calf muscle. And then I'm going to take this same side leg and I'm going to carefully bring it. I might need to kind of physically kind of move it there. I'm going to bring it in between my hands so that now I can stretch my hip. So these are my hip flexors, the little muscle that sits between the top of the thigh and the belly. And they can get quite tight. So I'm just gently opening this out. So I want to make sure that my knee sits over the top of my ankle, and that my hips stay fairly square. So I don't want to kind of sit into this. I'm just kind of exaggerating. I want to keep my hips kind of both facing, towards the front. And it might be that you need something, some yoga props or some books that are even, just to place underneath your hands so that you can possibly support yourself to be a little more upright. Should you need this, you could come, quite upright here. So from this hip stretch, I'm going to bring my knees back alongside one another, and then I'm going to take this other leg then. So other leg out behind me to stretch the calf, just as we did before. You might just start to rock backwards and forwards. You can feel the difference there in the degree of stretch into the calf. And when you've stretched that calf, you're going to bring this leg through between the hands and find a position that helps you to stretch this hip flexor, this psoas muscle. So remember, knee does not want to jut out over the top of the ankle. And you want to imagine that you can sort of keep a rod, through the hips. You're not allowing one hip to come significantly forward of the other. And then see if you can find a bit of a lift in your heart. Lovely. And then let's come back into that child's pose. So draw the knees back, take the knees the width of the mat, big toes together. Find your way into child's pose if it was comfortable before. Breathing fluidly in and out. And then you're going to inhale and lift the head. And we're going to find our way down onto our tummies then. So just finding your way down. And then we're going to come into a pose now called Sphinx pose. So bringing your elbows underneath your shoulders. It's like you're kind of propping yourself up, forearms are long. And if this is too extreme for some backs, then you might prefer to take the forearms and fold them and so that you're a little bit lower, possibly even resting the head on the forearms. And actually, if your back is very tight, it's worth knowing that lying on your belly is a little bit of a back bend, so that might be enough. You don't have to come further up unless that feels good for your body. So from Sphinx, you're trying to kind of find some openness across your chest, drawing the heart forwards, finding this kind of open position across the fronts of the shoulders. So you might stay in Sphinx or a modification that I described in Sphinx, or you might come into a little cobra pose. So if you're coming into cobra, today we're actually going to take our hands a little bit wider than we perhaps would normally. So I'm just bringing them slightly wider and slightly above my head. And then I'm going to inhale and just lift my head, lift the top of my body. There's no pressure to come really high. This is like a little mini cobra, drawing the shoulders gently down the back, trying to keep the spine in line. So I'm not bringing my head back like this. I'm kind of gazing down in front of me a little bit. And then exhaling, lowering down to the floor. I might repeat this or stay in Sphinx or stay on my belly. Inhaling to lift. And exhaling to lower. Great. Okay. So we're going to come back up to all fours, and then we're going to come into a downward facing dog. So come up in the best way for your body, but you may bring your hands to your chest, engage your belly, push your body up, and then find your way into downward facing dog. So for down dog, you want to have your hands lightly ahead of your shoulders, pressing into the bases of your finger pads and your knuckles, tucking your toes, and then sending your sit bones up and back. And it's totally fine to bend your knees in downward dog. In fact, I would encourage it, particularly if you're very tight through the backs of the legs. Just gives your body a chance at finding the shape that we're trying to find in downward facing dog. engaging the belly. And then we're going to find our way up to stand. So you might just bring the knees down and then bring your body up to stand, or you may take some little steps and walk yourself up, taking your time to slowly uncurl the body bit by bit until you come to full standing. So I'm coming in to mountain pose now. So this is just a great posture to find stability, to find evenness and symmetry in your body. So with the feet very slightly apart, we're going to press down through all four corners of the feet. I'm going to start to fire up the muscles in my legs, engage my belly, maybe engage my pelvic floor. Start to find a little lift through my heart. Imagine that tall spine, like we did when we were sitting, engaging this kind of long, extended feeling in the body. We're going to take a little standing sequence now. So we're coming from from mountain pose, and I'd like us to come into a little bit of a squat. So this pose is called chair pose. So I want you to start to imagine that you're sitting down into a chair. Now, we don't want these knees to head over the toes. We want to think about gliding them back and gliding the bottom back at the same time. I'm bringing my hands forward because this may give me stability. You may be happy like this, or you may prefer to bring the hands to the chest. But I'm making my legs work, my quads work, my bottom work here. And then I'm going to inhale and rise up. Know that you don't have to go really low here. So, you could stay a little bit higher if you're nursing knees, if you don't want to come really low. So just listen in to what feels good. So from here, we're going to come into a pose called Warrior One. So I'm going to take my leg back. I'm going to take one leg back, and I'm going to keep my front foot straight, and I'm going to turn my back toes in a little. So I'm turning them in. Now, traditionally in Warrior One, you might come quite narrow in your pose. Your front heel might actually line up with your back instep. But that can feel quite narrow. So if you feel like you need a little bit more space in your pose, then perhaps you become a little wider. And what we're trying to do in Warrior One is to think about sort of very gently drawing the hips towards the front of the mat. Don't force this. Just let this kind of come over time. So a little bit of a lift with the heart. You might feel good to raise the hands above the head. Okay, a couple of breaths here. So we'll inhale, and as we exhale, let's bring the hands down to the hips. And if you took this front foot wide, just draw it back into the center a little bit. And now what I want you to do is keep your feet roughly the same. You might widen a little bit. But I want you to open your hips out to the side of your mat. And then open out your hands as well. So we're coming into a pose called Warrior Two here. So my front knee is stacked up over my ankle. And you can see here, I'm not allowing my knee to cave in towards my big toe. I'm kind of staying open and positive. So I'm lining up my knee with the sort of center of my foot here. This is Warrior Two. Gazing over your middle finger, feeling some expanse across the chest. I'm going to inhale, and as I exhale, I'm going to drop my hands down here. And then I'm just going to turn my feet round to parallel. And now I'm going to take a pose called Temple Pose. So I'm turning my feet out, and I'm turning my knees out, you know, the same direction as my feet. So I've got a big deep squat here, you know, almost like I'm riding a giant horse. And show you from a side view here, what's quite common in this pose is that we almost sort of draw the pelvis forward. So we want to think about seeing if we can make this into a squat, you know, so sitting down with the bottom here. So we're going to take a little cat-cow movement within this pose. So we're going to inhale, and as we exhale, we're going to round the back. And then we're going to inhale and just very gently open the chest. I'm not leaning back. Exhale and round. And inhale and open. And then I'm going to take my hands back to my hips, and I'm going to start to heel toe my feet in towards one another. And I'm going to come and step back to the front of my mat where I was before. So I'm now going to get back into this chair. So gliding the knees back, sitting down like you're sitting down into a chair. Remember, this doesn't have to be really high, you know, or really low. So just, you know, find the position that is adequate, you know, for your body. Take an inhalation here. This is strengthening as well as stretching. And then inhale, stand up, hands to the hips. Let's step back and find our warrior one on the opposite side then. So front toes straight, back toes turning in. Remember, you can add a little bit of width to your pose if this helps you to kind of, you know, grow into this pose. This is quite strong on the calf. It's quite tricky to guide your hips in the direction forward, which is where they're supposed to be heading. No forcing. Maybe you lift the hands, lifting up the heart. Let's inhale, and as we exhale, drop the hands down. And then I'm just shifting. So just very gently here, shifting the feet. If my front foot was wide, I'm bringing it back into the center so that I can open my body out. My hips are now opening out to the long edge of my mat. My knee is lining up over my ankle and also with the center of my foot. I'm gazing over my middle finger. Breathing in, breathing out. Take one more inhalation and then exhale, drop the hands. I'll turn myself round, but we're coming into this temple pose. So find your way back into this temple pose and just kind of rock a little bit through the feet. Good. Just feeling all of the muscles of the legs. And then start to heel toe the feet in towards one another, like massaging for the ankles and for the lower legs. And then we'll step to the front of the mat, and we're going to come down to all fours and find this downward facing dog again then. So to all fours, knees under the hips, wrists under the shoulders. And then to enter into downward facing dog, we're going to take the hands lightly forward. And it's really important that you grip into the mat with the whole hand, particularly the base of the index fingers and the thumb. That's really important in downward facing dog. And then turning over my toes, and then just getting ready to send these sit bones up and back. And then I'm sort of finding some space across my upper back. It's almost like I'm trying to hide my armpits from, you know, somebody next to me if there was someone on a mat either side. And bringing my head in line with my arms. And remember, totally fine to bend the knees or not, you know, bend the knees. Do what feels good. There's no necessity to, you know, touch the floor with these heels from day one. Take your time to get there. Good. Lower the knees to the floor. Let's lower all the way down to the floor once again. So you might do this from a little half plank, or you may just lower your body down in your own time. So finding this Sphinx shape again, or perhaps it's cobra. Perhaps it's this little wide-armed cobra. Inhaling and exhaling down to the ground. And inhaling. And exhaling down to the ground here. Good. Resting on the belly. So because this is a little sequence that's going to help to stretch leg muscles, we're going to take a quad stretch here. So all I want to do is to bring my heel towards my bottom if it's accessible. So it might not be accessible. You may be able to reach it with your hand, and that's all great. But if that wasn't possible for some reason, it might be that you can use some sort of prop, some sort of belt or tie or shawl or something to help you to create this stretch. You know, so something to kind of help you if the angle of the heel, you know, isn't coming all the way towards the bottom. So don't force this. Listen into how knees feel. And then what you're trying to do is to keep the knees not touching, but in a position where they're kind of towards one another. So you don't want this knee kind of coming out to the side. And then we'll inhale. As we exhale, let's just rest that leg down. And let's do the same on the opposite side. You could have a real difference from one side to the other. So just take it steady, listen into what you need. And I'm completely lying flat with my upper body here. Okay, inhale, exhale to release. And then let's carefully bring ourselves onto our backs. So when you come onto your back, maybe it's good for you to just take a nice long stretch. Maybe you'd prefer not to take the hands over the head, just whatever works best with your shoulders. This is a good full body stretch from head to toe or from fingertips to toes. And then bringing the hands back by the sides, you're going to bend the knees so that the soles of the feet come to the floor. And you're going to have your heels fairly close towards your bottom, beginning with a gap between the knees that is about your hip bone distance apart. And then you're going to press into your feet and then start to take what we call bridge pose. So pressing into all four parts of the feet to create some lift through the body. And again, don't force this, just allow your body to find its way. You know, if your back's not happy in this pose, then we perhaps, you know, just kind of work up to it. You might, no pressure to come, you know, all of the way. You might be kind of halfway here. But you're lifting towards bridge. And when you find a position that works, you're going to just sort of start to squeeze the bottom a little bit to help you create this pose. This is really lengthening for the whole front line of the body. I'm sure you can feel this. Stretching long through the quads, the hips, the shoulders, keeping the head still, looking up towards the ceiling, lifting the chest gently towards the chin. We'll take one more big inhale. And then as we exhale, let's lower the bottom carefully down towards the floor here. Good. And then we're going to come into a pose that's going to stretch the hips. So this pose is called lying pigeon, or can sometimes be called thread the needle. So I'm actually going to take a back view to you so that you can see me here. So I'm going to cross one ankle, not the ankle bone, sort of just the edge of my lower leg. I'm going to cross it onto the thigh here. And then I'm going to take both hands and I'm going to reach either side of the thigh of the foot that's still on the ground. And I'm going to see if I can draw this whole structure in towards my body. And this foot is just kind of, sort of hanging down, so you haven't got to kind of do anything special with this here. And it may be helpful for you to pull the toes back of the bent leg, just to help you support that knee. Now, if you're really kind of straining to kind of reach this structure or to pull anything towards you, then again, you could use a belt to bring your leg to you so that you can actually still lie happily, well through your chest, well through your shoulders and your neck. So that's an option here in your lying pigeon. Let's inhale, and as we exhale, let's gently release that structure. And then we're going to swap legs. So bring the opposite leg on top, and then reach either side of your thigh to pull this whole structure towards the body, towards the head. And you're feeling this stretch sort of in the exterior of the hip here. Starting to feel your breath again. Notice how bringing breath into your body, helps you to actually make the most of a stretch. So often we're kind of fighting tension in our body. When we breathe, we find a little bit of help for the resistance. We can stop the fight against the resistance. Let's inhale. And as we exhale, bringing the foot down to the floor, let's release the leg so that you're lying ordinarily here. We're just going to take one more stretch for the legs. So this is a stretch for the hamstrings. So I'm going to begin with my legs lying long, and then I'm going to hug my right knee in towards my chest. Now, in most cases, you'll probably do this with the leg long. If there's any back trouble, you may prefer to have the knee bent with the sole of the foot on the ground as you do this. If you choose for the leg to be long, you want to kind of fire up this leg, just sort of recruit the muscles of the top of the thigh and kind of make the foot quite active. And then I'm going to take my hands behind my thigh, and I'm just going to start to kind of stretch up here. Now, the hamstrings get very tight for many. So, you might find that, you've got a bit of a bend in your knee and you're kind of struggling to create a stretch here. Totally fine to bend the knee, or it would also be okay to take a belt, and I'm taking this to the ball of my foot, not the center of my foot. And this might also just help me to kind of let this leg out a little bit so that I can really feel that stretch through the hamstring and through the calf, to the back of my whole leg. And the belt also just helps me to be more relaxed through my shoulders and through my neck. So I'm not kind of straining through the face, to hold this position here. Let's inhale, exhale, bend the knee in towards the chest. Slowly let that leg out and then bring the other knee in towards the chest. So remember, either leg is long or maybe the leg is bent. And then you're stretching up. Maybe you're using a belt. Maybe you're just holding on, behind the leg, but just listening into the structure of your shoulders. Breathing, noticing if a muscle is tight, how much resistance you put up to that. See if you can take a nice long in-breath and a nice long out-breath. Then we'll inhale, exhale, bringing that knee back into the chest. Let's have both knees coming into the chest now. Gentle rock on your spine. We're going to come into a lying twist. So I'm going to take my feet down to the floor, and then I'm going to allow my knees to roll out to one side. So it might be helpful for me to just pick up my bottom, my pelvis, and just very slightly shift it to the opposite side to where I want to go, and then send the knees over. So I'm kind of lying on my back, with my upper body, and then I'm creating twists, side lying in my lower body. So maybe it feels good to look over my back arm. Maybe it doesn't. Just do what feels good. And then I'm just going to turn my pose around so you can see me for a moment. So sometimes when we come into this pose, you can get a little bit tight or feel a little bit tight into this back shoulder structure, or feel very tight across the chest here. So if you're just finding it very hard to lie, flat through this back shoulder, it might be that you just choose to bend that elbow, placing the hand onto the hip, so that you just give that shoulder a little bit of an easier time as it starts to loosen. So then bringing the knees to the center on an inhalation, and then preparing to let them fall out to the opposite side. So bringing the knees out to the opposite side, looking out over your back arm if that works, not putting your neck under any strain, listening to the structure of the back arm. Allowing your body to slow down now. It's our final pose before we head towards Shavasana. And then we're inhaling, bringing the knees to the center, just evening out through the pelvis, through the lower back, hugging the knees into the chest. One more time. Little rock on your spine. Then we're settling into our relaxation pose. So just as we said at the beginning, some are happy to lie flat, some not so happy. So if you don't enjoy lying flat, maybe you bend the knees. Might feel really good to place a bolster if you had one under the backs of the knees, or maybe a sturdy cushion, or a rolled up towel. So that can just help you to find a flatter feeling through the back if you don't enjoy lying flat. So we're coming into relaxation bit now. Just allow your body to rest. And allow your body to take up space. We allow the body some room, and it can literally breathe, it can literally expand. your ankles want to roll out to the side, then let them. Start to take your attention to your breath. Feel for that rise and fall of your belly as your breath starts to slow down, to become a little fuller. Allow the muscles, the joints, and all the areas of the feet and the toes to start to rest now. Your awareness to the lower leg, calves, shins. Ask them to relax too. Find that space in the knee. I'm aware of the fronts and the backs of the thighs. Allow them to soften. Allow the hips and the pelvis to rest. Feel the length of your spine supported on the ground. Your belly soften. Your rib cage soften. Feel that you can offer a little bit of softness to the shoulders and the neck. Those areas often carry a lot of tension. Even allow some of the muscles in the face to relax. Let your jaw unclench. Notice how you might have a tendency to furrow your brow. And just allow it to be unfurrowed and smooth, even for a moment. Bringing your attention back to your breath. Noticing the rise and the fall of your belly. Starting to make a little bit of movement with your fingers, your toes. Slowly placing a bend in the knees if they're not bent already, so that the soles of the feet come to the floor. Giving yourself a moment to feel neutral in the pelvis. And then hugging the knees into the chest. Little rock again. Little circular motion with the knees, easing off the back. And then you're going to gently roll onto your side. So just roll on to your side. And then press yourself up to sit. Come to your original seated position. Notice how you feel. Bring the hands together at your heart center. And finishing with Namaste. Thank you.